How exactly is it structured, and what kind of projects and stuff do you guys take on to increase economic development?
Yeah. So how does that work, right? So think of the chamber as doing three big sort of buckets of activities. One is economic development. So that can be anything from working with companies that are looking to potentially locate in Austin. We might help them with site selection, introducing them to potential supply chains, introducing them to other community members, helping them literally find a place and a site where they can do business. It can also extend all the way to economic development incentives. So that economic development piece is a really, really wide range. And I think it's important to say too, it also includes small business economic development. So 2020 was a weird year. And that was a year where in our town, a lot of small businesses were suffering disproportionately because our music industry, our tourism industry, restaurants and bars. And so there was important economic development activity to do there to do whatever we could to have as many of those businesses stay in business as possible. So that's one bucket. A second bucket is the policy work that we do around state, local, and even some federal policy making. And that is to keep an eye on those conditions that are helpful to businesses. But it can also extend to things like Project Connect. So the voters of Austin just approved Project Connect by a pretty nice little margin.
Which was Prop A, right?
Prop A, yep. And so we worked really hard on Prop A, not only in consulting with Cap Metro in the city of Austin as they were designing it, but also we view transportation as just a critical piece of infrastructure for Austin as we grow. Of course, we've all had the pleasure of sitting in traffic in Austin. And so we know that for the business community, having good transportation systems is really, really important. So that policy bucket can include a lot of different kinds of things that just help Austin. I mean, think of it this way. If Austin is a great place to live, work, and thrive, then the business community does well. And so our policy work can be pretty broad ranging in that way. And then the third bucket is to connect businesses to each other, but also to important information. And so, for example, this year we held over 50 webinars for our members, and they ranged from hearing from the governor to hearing from the comptroller on what's going on with the state budget. But we also had people from the mental health community come in and talk about what people's workforces were experiencing, because 2020 was a rough year for mental health. And we want to make sure that our businesses are getting the best information that's out there on a whole range of topics. So those are the three big things: economic development, policy work, and then connecting businesses to each other and to vital information.
Okay, cool. So let's go to the first one. Did you mention companies when moving into Austin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also existing companies, right?
Yeah, which is great. But so I'm just curious, since there's so much news about, tons of companies are coming here. Has this year been, pretty crazy as far as people coming here and connecting with the Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah. In fact, 2020 was the strongest year that we've had for job growth from relocations since the inception of our economic development program called Opportunity Austin. So as weird as 2020 was, it was a great year for Austin's economy. Now, I say that with the important note that if you are a small business, a bar, a restaurant, if you're in the tourism industry, the music industry, it was and still is a rough time.
For sure. So, there's companies big companies like Tesla and stuff like that coming here, and then they basically kind of put out this bidding system, right, to where they find the city that's going to give them the least amount of taxes.
So yeah, let's talk about that. So when you're doing economic development, think of it as a toolbox, right? I mean, for some companies, for example, Oracle expanded its campus and brought its headquarters to Austin last year. They already had a footprint in Austin. They were already expanding that campus to facilitate growth. And in that case, they had everything they needed in order to make the decision to put their headquarters in Austin. In other cases, like Tesla, Austin or some other place in the region might be competing against 3 or 4 other cities. Now more than ever, you're competing internationally as well. There are countries and cities all over the world that would love to get a Tesla gigafactory. So in the case when there are competitions, then companies are asking local communities to see what they can do. Usually it involves some form of tax rebate. I think that's a really important point. This is all really performance-based. These aren't checks that you write to these companies just to come to Austin. These are contracts, and the company has to perform on their end. So like in the case of Tesla, they have to make the investment they promised to make. They have to hire the people and the jobs that they promised to create. They also promised to create a community benefit fund so that as they come to Austin, we can do some important work on transportation or affordable housing.
Interesting. So the community benefit fund, they're helping to donate to this particular fund to improve these things?
That's right. That's right. And so the theory there is that if you're lucky enough to get a Tesla has an opportunity to kind of raise boats in Austin. And what we find is that companies are really willing to do that. So much so that in the case of Tesla, they're working with Workforce Solutions and Austin Community College to make sure that they are targeting people in traditionally underserved low-income communities to create specific opportunities. And in a company like Tesla, that works pretty well because they'll train people. So if they can find local talent, then they'll train people to work in their factory. Mm-hmm. And then you're really doing some work that's hard to get at, which is to do that matchmaking between people who are really in need of a job and the jobs that are coming to Austin.
Yeah, that's awesome. So do you know anything about Samsung's? I know there's a huge Samsung, I don't know if it's a corporate office or if it's a factory or whatever it is over there, Palmer area.
Right.
They were talking about bringing another large factory of some kind or corporate office where they said the average salary was going to be $100,000.
So Samsung has been in Austin for 25 years. Mm-hmm. Long history here and a really successful history on a number of fronts. One, it's a fab site, right? So we were lucky enough 2 decades ago to have Samsung make the decision to come to Austin, which sort of anchored us in that emerging technology sector. So that was huge for Austin. I mean, now we take it for granted that Austin's sort of a tech town, but 25 years ago, you had to be really thoughtful about who you were recruiting to Austin to make sure that you were setting up for the future of a tech world in Austin. So Samsung was a big part of that. The things that they have done for Manor ISD, the school district out there, are just amazing. Working with kids on STEM skills, those kinds of tech careers. And then, of course, a lot of jobs have come with Samsung. So they're celebrating their 25th anniversary here in Austin right now, and I think we've been lucky to have them. And so, but here's the deal with tech. And this, I know this is a statement of the obvious, but people forget. To stay cutting edge, it requires constant investment and constant innovation. So as Samsung looks for its next big expansion to produce its next generation of technology, they're going to need a site in order to do that. And it is an international company already, so they've got lots and lots of choices on where they can do that. Austin, in some ways makes a lot of sense because they've got investment here already. But they've also got the possibility of building the plant at their headquarters in Korea. So that's an example where you really are talking about a global competition. And our interest in Austin and having a Samsung next generation facility here is making sure that we continue to anchor that tech industry for ourselves. And since Samsung has been such an important part of that, continuing that partnership would be a great win for Austin.
Yeah, for sure. Are there any other news of big companies, Tesla, Samsung, anything like that coming in?
Last year we had so many announcements. And so let me give you a sense of kind of where they fell. Life sciences has really emerged as an important sector in our economy. And here's where you really want your economic development and your community planning to just be beautifully stitched together. The Dell Medical School is actually a big reason why that life sciences is coming to Austin and is growing as a sector. And it was, a lot of people worked really hard on that medical school to make sure that we could have that vibrant sector in Austin, in addition to better health care for Austinites. So there's an example where everybody benefits from Dell Medical being here. And it created a whole suite of businesses that have since come to Austin. The Army Futures Command was a big deal location in Austin in 2018 because that's the next round of technology and innovation for the military.
I forgot about that. That was big.
Yeah, it's huge.
My friend in cybersecurity was like, "Oh, this is amazing. There's so many jobs from that." Yeah.
So many jobs, and other companies came here because the Army Future Command is here. So we saw that in life sciences. We saw it with Army Futures Command. We've seen it with the finance field is choosing Austin over and over again. Of course, the tech and innovation. We're like a magnet for that sector. Tesla gives us automobile manufacturing, which is new for us. And so that'll open up a whole new sector. So, people always sort of scratch their heads and wonder, how is it that Austin tends to emerge from a downturn first?
That was going to be my question, is what is Austin doing to make all this happen?
Well, that's really a lot of hard work by Chamber of Commerce and Opportunity Austin, and not just getting any job that we can get, but making sure that we're building really innovative and modern sectors for the future. And so that's where all that work starts to pay off.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can we go over the 3 buckets again?
Sure.
The first one was companies coming here and
economic development.
Yep.
Yep.
The second one was kind of like lobbying, right?
It's advocacy. So it could include lobbying. It could include direct policy work, but it also includes things like, we do a lot of work in the school to work transition space. And the reason that makes so much sense for us is because the number one thing that companies are looking for is talent. So anything that we can do to make sure that there's talent coming to Austin, that we're growing our own talent, that's good work for us. And so the policy work can extend into areas like education.
Mm-hmm. So what are some things maybe going on right now that you're working with in that bucket?
Yeah. So I would say priorities for us are that school to work transition. And I would put with that upskilling. And so we've known for a long time that the jobs of the future are going to require some kind of digital literacy. And what we've got with 2020, we had so many job losses in those sectors I talked about earlier, right? Like, so restaurants, bars, live music, those things. Well, we have an opportunity to target those people that lost their jobs, provide some upskilling, so they're ready, and they're ready to go when a Tesla makes a decision to come to Austin. And so that kind of education, workforce upskilling is a big bucket. Another one is transportation and infrastructure. So that's everything from Project Connect to the improvements on IH-35. Those are things that we worked really hard on. Other areas include, we're always paying attention to the health sector in Austin and making sure that Dell Medical School is successful, partly because it was just evolving the healthcare system in Austin. So that, and of course, the legislature's meeting now, they gavelled in a couple of weeks ago. So we'll be paying close attention to what's happening at the legislature as it relates to both Austin and economic development.